What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Daniel DuBois, Joe Joyce. Apparently, these two heavyweights, undefeated as they are, have agreed to terms for a clash April 18th at the O2 Arena in London, England. Of course, this is a huge fight that will attract a lot of attention, not just in the UK, but worldwide. Okay, although the title will be on the line for the British title, which is held by Daniel DuBois, it's a bigger picture overall because Joyce and DuBois coming to an agreement to fight. It means that Joe won't be taking up that fight against Filip Hrgović. The European Boxing Union ordered Joe Joyce versus Hrgović for the first heavyweight title. It's a fight that would have been winnable for Joe Joyce, but he's already beat Hrgović in the World Boxing Super Series. Okay, DuBois is 22 years old. Me counterpunching DuBois versus Joe Joyce. It's a very good fight for both fighters. Why? Because now Joe Joyce is a fighter that's been looking for that next step. You know, he's beat guys like Stavern. You know, he's took out a lot of journeymen in his career. He is 10-0 at 9 KOs. So Daniel DuBois has the same knockout percentage, which is 14-0 with 13 KOs. And I give the edge in speed to DuBois. Joe Joyce is a big guy, though. How can DuBois fight someone that big? The guys I've seen DuBois fight has been his height or shorter. Okay. And a lot of his knockouts have been really quickly waved off. So you question the opposition, you know. Joe Joyce, these guys have something to prove because, of course, Daniel DuBois is ranked number 3 with the WBO. Okay, and I think that comes a step closer to fighting someone like Joseph Parker. Okay. And possibly those guys, if Joseph Parker takes on Daniel DuBois, that's a whole nother fight and there's a whole nother video. But though this fight leads to that particular fight. Okay, so the sky's the limit for both guys. Now, if Joe Joyce is actually able to upset Daniel DuBois, that's a huge name on his resume, depending on what DuBois does with the rest of his career. Okay. Because, again, these guys are still fresh. We have the British champion, Daniel DuBois, taking on Joe Joyce. And Triple D and the Juggernaut, we'll got to see what happens. Me just looking at it without really analyzing these two guys, I have to give the edge to DuBois because of the speed. But, again, he's stepping up in competition. Okay, it's like the Norman fight. But in the Norman fight, we learned he was ready for that test. And he blew Norman out of the water, okay? If he can do that to Joe Joyce, they'll be making a huge statement because Joe Joyce had many opportunities where he stepped into fights and then backed out of fights, okay? Like, for example, he stepped into the Luis Ortiz fight, then stepped out of it, okay? Because Abel Sanchez did not want him in there with someone like Ortiz, which was smart. A southpaw like Ortiz is pretty dangerous, and then people will know why they call him avoided or why they did call him avoided or whatever. You know what I mean? Then he wanted to take on Miller. Miller wanted to tune up. So it was kind of like, hey, I backed up. Well, out of one fight, I stepped up for another fight. Now I really got my test. And DuBois is the best test that he could possibly have. You know, Frank Warren really surprised me because I didn't think he would put 2 in both of his prodigies in. You know, maybe when they get 20-0 or something like that. But it feels like to me that Frank Warren, honestly, is cashing in all the chips. Okay? He has to say, he's like, hey, one will rise, the other one will fall. You know? 2 man enter, 1 man leave, right? So this is what I see for this particular situation. We know that both of these guys are hungry. Both undefeated. Joe Joyce is, 6'6". Daniel DuBois is, 6'3". You know, these are some big guys, man. DuBois, I think, has the power and edge, too. But Joe Joyce is so big, and he can hit also. So he has some punching power. And I also seen him take some punches against Stavern. Stavern's a heavy punching guy, regardless of what you might think, regardless of his age. Yes, he's washed up. Yes, he's past his prime. but Joe Joyce was able to take those shots and still keep coming, being the juggernaut and living up to his nickname, Juggernaut, because he ran right over Stavern. So Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce, it seems like a great fight, like a really great fight. And I know a lot of people are going to come at this because let's face it, if Daniel Dubois is number 3, okay, the only person that's standing in his way is Joseph Parker and, of course, Alexander Usyk. Now imagine the fight with Parker, and really the fight was supposed to be in negotiations with Parker, but people misunderstand the title of that article. It's Joseph Parker was willing. Okay, it didn't say that he was going to fight Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is fighting who we're talking about now, Joe Joyce. Okay, so he was willing to fight that guy. But that's all talk until they sign, until they agree to terms, until something is tangible in writing to make sure they're going to fight. Then they train, then they promote, then they fight. That's how it works. So Joseph Parker fighting Daniel Dubois right now, no. Maybe the next fight. Depends on what Joseph Spidey Parker is going to do. Okay? So we have to see what happens in this fight. But this fight is very, very important because Joe Joyce is also a guy that, look at it, he only has 10 fights, 9 knockouts. Sure, lower opposition, but he's taking these guys out, And there's more to Joe Joyce than a lot of people don't think. He was at the Shaolin Temple. He's spent a lot of time with martial arts. And honestly, I think he's another Lomachenko with less talent, or should I say less skilled. He spent a lot of time outside of the professional boxing ranks. And I think he started a little late, honestly. But we have him now, and then he's showing why he was who he was in another platform in the amateurs. You know what I mean? But so is Daniel Dubois. So this is going to be a big show. I may go to that fight. I may go to that fight and cover that fight at the O2 Arena. April 18th sounds like a good time to get loose, shoot over to the UK, counterpunch it, and it looks like a great fight to visit the UK with. I know the energy will be spectacular, and I would love to see that fight live. Why not? Okay. But yeah, these guys are a step from that championship level. They're already contenders. They've been beating journeymen and novice fighters, but these guys are contenders. And it's funny, they're contenders being they have so less of fights. Look at these guys. Look at Daniel Dubois, 14-0 and 13 KOs. He should still be a prospect at that point. A lot of people view him a prospect, but then look, he's third on with the WBO. So let's say Joshua decides to drop that belt. What do you think? It's up for grabs because Usyk has to fight somebody for it, right? Imagine if Daniel Dubois can take out Joe Joyce, and then can bypass Parker, and Parker might fight him for it, or Parker and Usyk might fight. But let's say something happens to Parker. Let's say he gets another spider bite, right? There you go. You got the next person in line, Daniel Dubois, number 3. So number 1 takes on number 3. That's going to be a massive fight. And that will be a test to Usyk. Why? Because regardless of what people think, Daniel Dubois is a real heavyweight. Okay? He's a hard, solid punching heavyweight. And he can hurt you. Okay? And he's a fresh fighter too. So he's a guy that has a known defeat. Usyk is a very skilled southpaw. And Triple D is very heavy with his right hand, really both hands. But if he hits you with that right hand, you may go down. So that would be an interesting fight to see, So this story can go on and go on, but we have to see who wins out of this fight. Again, this is a very spectacular fight to have. I was really impressed with Frank Warren. It just shows me what desperation does. When you're desperate, you do aggressive things. And this is a very aggressive thing to put a fight with your 2 contenders together, your 2 future contenders or newly entered contenders from prospect level. into a fight against each other. That's big. That's very big. You guys tell me what you think about Daniel Dubois taking on Joe Joyce. Who do you think wins? Leave your comments below. And you guys been counterpunched. Peace.